So if we could all stand and salute the flag in the back of the room, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Dr. Ross, do you have the notice of posting, please?
Yes, we have posted this meeting on our website, at the SAU, at each of our town offices, and in each of our schools.
Okay.
This won't let me record.
We don't have any recognitions tonight, although I would like to recognize Mr. Reinhardt for his extra duty of serving on the school budget committee and all the extra meetings that therefore were put into his calendar. And we appreciate all of that extra work, which hasn't quite ended yet.
Thank you.
You have in your packet the minutes of December 12th, which was our regular business meeting for December, and then there was emailed to you the last pages 10 through 12 that had been forgotten, and it was Mr. Lieto's comments that he added. So are there any, that he read at the meeting. Are there any corrections or omissions to the minutes of December 12th that you have? Mr. Lieto?
On page 7, line 322. Basically that paragraph says that I didn't get an email and therefore quoted incorrect numbers. My recollection of my comment is that the number should have been 21.6 million, was in fact quoted as 21.2 or 3. I checked and it was quoted as 21.2, and so I'd like the minutes to reflect that I did correct it in the minutes to 21.6.
So,
Say again, please?
Oh, you said line 322?
Those numbers are not there, that's my point.
Okay.
I think it should be added that the incorrect number of 21.2, when corrected, should have been 21.6 million.
What line is that?
It's here, this paragraph.
328?
No, page 7, 3,
are there other corrections?
323.
Did I just miss that right? You want it added after, on line 322, and at the end, at the full, that what Leo said that the incorrect number of 21.2, when corrected, should have been 21.6.
That's fine.
Any others? Mr. Belvin?
Yeah, line 71.
Page number, please.
Page number 2, line 71. I said, notice, it should read the tractor loader, not just plain tractor, the tractor loader. Maybe I said it wrong, or Dan got it wrong, maybe. That was my fault if he did. And it should be sitting out near the track, not on the track.
Anything else? Did you finish, Mr. Belvin?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Migliore?
On page 2, line 86, how should that sentence read there, Mary?
Oh, all of the words "she" doesn't belong there. So I think it's just said the final version of the spreadsheets is online.
Oh, okay, so omit "she."
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what you meant there.
I didn't write it, and obviously I didn't see it when I was proofreading.
Okay, on page 3, line 117, I think I said the reverse of this. It reads, Vince Paul Migliore said, the more you uncover, the more you study the data.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The more you study the data.
The more you uncover.
So the more you uncover, the more you...
The more you study.
No, it should read,
The more you...
that I said, the more you study the data, the more you uncover, in finding trends, etc. And then on page 7, line 307, I think I said I submit that they should make the expense of putting it in as an ad in the newspaper. It reads now, submits they should take the expense. I suppose it's not real critical, but
Is that line 307?
and then, I couldn't find it, Marie, but I don't even remember if, yeah, it had to be this meeting. There was reference in here to the procedure that we did in the past with respect to the default budget. When we took out salaries, you made a statement that in the past, we did not include those in the default budget. And somewhere in the minutes, I read that you said the opposite of that. Did anyone else pick that up? I did that, I found that online and
In line
couldn't-
392, it said the default says keep things the way they are. And quote code includes the changes. Is the closest that I see to anything that I suggested about that, but it wasn't exactly what I said.
If you're looking in the area of the paragraph starting on line 243, page 5, the last line in that seems to say what I thought that Mary had said.
Yeah, well, there it is.
Did you have
Where's that, Lou?
It's on page 5, paragraph starting on line 243. I'm specifically referring to the sentence that starts on 246.
I can't, I understand what he's doing, so, did you get one of these when you came in? Right. This is
Can
sign
you tell me how the paragraph
help
starts?
describe.
Because when I make changes, the lines.
I don't think you need to make any changes. I think the line is accurate the way it is. Vincent, does it strike your point?
We must have confirmed the positions removed last year were out of the default budget as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought Marie said that somewhere else as well. And when I read this online, I read the reverse.
Yeah.
So, and then I just didn't get to make a note of it, but I think that covers it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Page 6, line 297, Mary Campbell said in the default budget there should be 100,000 for DES. Was that the New Hampton?
It should have been New
Instead?
Hampton.
Right, yeah, New Hampshire.
Okay.
That's what we did when we had to do Bristol
the life
based on the
safety.
life safety
It
mandate.
should we not say for the NHCS life safety mandate,
Right,
so
good
it's
idea.
clear? NHCS instead of DES, life safety mandate.
Anything else, Sue?
I haven't seen anything.
Anyone else?
I already, excuse me. I corrected earlier with Amy, line 330, 334, and 337, that was Heather Gosson and Regina Gilpatrick, so she's got those changes already, where the question marks are. And we would really, again, ask the audience, the public, to please sign in print so we can clearly reference your name if you do speak and we can get it in the minutes correctly. Thank you.
And the audience has asked us to speak up so we can be heard.
Well, I move we accept the minutes as amended.
Thank you. Okay. Bruce moved and Paul seconded to accept the minutes of December 12th as amended. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Josh, would you like to give us a student council report?
Sure. On Wednesdays during the week, we have what is called advisories, where students of the same class will meet. There will be like 5 or so classes for juniors, 5 or so classes for seniors, and right before the holiday break, students in these advisories had come up with a plan called Pay It Forward, where they were almost essentially community service or volunteer projects that the students themselves engineered and that's what I'm looking for, put into action. Some of which include sending candy canes to children for the holidays, sending letters to Santa to Macy's. They just to like hand out to kids, and there are also some other community service projects going on at the school, such as a canned food drive that was actually recognized by the NHIAA a few weeks back before Thanksgiving, and just actually a lot of community service activities going on around the school in the wake of the holiday break. And that about wraps it up.
I know, Josh, that I had the delightful pleasure of stopping in at the New Hampshire Community School, and one of the advisory groups did a Pay It Forward, and they brought books to read aloud to the second grade class in Miss Betty Ann Holleran's class, which was just a really nice way to kick off their holidays as well.
I mean, I wasn't able to hit every single
Right.
one. I did not receive a list that just had every
Yep.
activity, but that was just the kind of bulk
Yeah.
of it.
What did your advisory do for Pay It Forward?
We had done, the candy canes.
And we saw a lot in the principals' reports of community service done by all of our elementary schools throughout the holidays as well. Does anyone have any question for Josh for the high school? We complimented him when he came in today that he's all dressed up with a jacket and tie on. I asked if there was any particular reason. No. So it was nice. Thank you, Josh. And we know you need to leave whenever for your homework. We don't have anything from the middle school in our packet, but was this at the table tonight?
I just passed that out tonight
Okay.
under communications, or,
The superintendent, the superintendent put at the table tonight, and that's on both sides, public notices about when petitioned articles for the warrant need to be submitted, when the budget hearing will be, so that's for your information. There-
Excuse me, if Josh is leaving, may I just ask one question?
Sure.
What is the NHAA, did you say, that recognized
It's
your?
New Hampshire Interscholastic Athletic Association,
Okay,
NHIAA,
Thank you.
that our high school belongs to, and we have to follow their rules. And so. But that's a good question, thank you.
would you also like me to read this warrant article as a receipt?
When we
Later?
get to
Okay.
warrant articles.
Okay.
You were emailed from the superintendent this morning. There was an email that came into the Community Relations Council email address. Remember that we heard a report a few weeks ago that such an email address had been created. So we have a citizen from Bridgewater who has used that email address, and the superintendent forwarded this to the school board, I believe today.
And the budget committee.
And also to the budget committee. And then there had been an anonymous letter from a concerned parent and resident of Newfound that was sent to the superintendent, the budget committee, and the school board. And the superintendent had forwarded that letter to everyone. You also have in your packet on purple piece of paper all of the reports from the administrators. It's great to read in Bridgewater Hebron about the math enrichment opportunities, and they're having their concert tomorrow night at 6:30. And again, all of the schools talked about community service and that they did throughout Thanksgiving and Christmas. The middle school talks about hosting the math meet for 7th and 8th grade, and that our students have been invited, both choral students and musicians, to the Lakes Region Music Festival and the Solo and Ensemble and Festival. Does anyone else have any questions about any of these reports or comments they wish to make? Also on purple paper, the last one was a report that Mr. Rossner got from the U.S. Postal Service to answer your questions last month about how much it would cost to send a notice to, you were discussing either registered voters or residents in each of the 7 towns to give information between the budget hearing and first deliberative session. So he has provided that information for you with a raise in postage starting January 22nd.
So we have begun to develop a newsletter that would explain the process and explain the warrant articles, and we can get that done prior to January 2nd if you direct us to do so.
January 22nd.
January 22nd, where the postage rates go up. So we've already begun the process of developing a newsletter, and we're waiting for the results of the budget hearing on Wednesday night for the final number to include. And we've done this in the past, and we've put it out in locations around the town, such as the Shop and Save and other, common locations, and we've sent them to the towns. But we will mail them out if you decide that these prices are in line with what you had in mind.
Mr. Belvin?
This is in addition to a mail out you're posting?
No, I'm saying we would mail.
Because I have a letter drawn up. I want to present to the board on what I like to have for mail, or they can vote on it later on when we go into business.
Okay.
If you recommend.
Oh, so you've already drafted what you want to
Yes.
have sent out?
You said
Okay, so if we wanted to incorporate that as part of a newsletter, or just do that, you can let us
That's, I have
know.
the newsletter, and the board can vote whatever they
Okay,
want.
okay.
I just drew it up, just,
Thank you, but you had all asked how much would it cost, and so Mr. Rosner has done the inquiries and gotten the information for you. Thank you, Dan.
And this would be one page, or?
There was,
That's for, it'd be up to about 3 pages in weight. But the theory being you take a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, fold it in half, seal it somehow, tape, staple, whatever, and bring it to the post office.
So you could have 2 or 3 pages probably.
right, as you've seen in the past with the high school newsletters, that they're usually an 11 by 17 folded in half with an insert, so we could do that.
Okay, under strategic plans, under infrastructure, you have 3 sets of minutes from the school budget committee. They had 3 meetings in December. And these are not for us to correct or anything unless there's something glaring. And I have already mentioned, Sue and Sharon, the error with your names on the December 20th minutes when I was at the their meeting last Tuesday, January 3rd. And Sharon was absent and we weren't there, so I spoke up. Does anyone wish to make any comments about Budget Committee? Mr. Reinhardt, since you've been so faithful and attended all of it, do you wish to make any comments?
At this point, the Budget Committee has agreed to accept the school board budget recommendation. that was agreed and voted on last meeting.
And that is the number that will be taken to the budget hearing on Wednesday night. Did this go out to everybody? Or no?
We did, we just emailed it today.
We have posted both the budget hearing as well as following the hearing, the Budget Committee has a meeting to finalize the budget based on what they've heard from the public. So the budget hearing is Wednesday, January 11th in the auditorium of this building, excuse me, starting at 6:30. And when it adjourns, then the Budget Committee will stay and have a meeting. So we encourage everyone to come. We are making arrangements to have the budget hearing videotaped. We hope the weather will cooperate. If it doesn't, we'll be here Thursday night instead. But we're supposed to be here Wednesday night. And I will present the one warrant article from the school board, and petitioners may present their petitioned articles. We'll get to that in a few minutes on our discussion items. And then the chair of the Budget Committee will present their proposed budget for FY13.
Mary, maybe I've made a mistake, but I had written the New Hampton School winter concert was going to be...
That's been rescheduled. The New Hampton Community School winter concert was originally scheduled for the 11th, and it has been rescheduled till February 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up.
I don't see anything else on the agenda for the other strategic plan report, so we now have time in our agenda for comments from the public about items on the agenda. And if you don't have one of these pink sheets, we'll be happy to give you one. I ask that you be recognized by the chair and you identify yourself and your town. And this is the first of 2 public comments on the agenda. And we are welcome to hear your comments about the agenda. Mr. Ogier?
Point of clarification on the upcoming budget hearing. I believe I heard Mr. Reinhardt say that the Budget Committee has agreed to go into the hearing with the same budget that the school board has set up. And, you know, if that's what they choose to do, that's all well and good. That's their choice to do that. But the clarification I'm looking for is the normal process is after the public hearing that the Budget Committee has is for them to meet and then finalize their vote on what they wish to send to the deliberative session. And I want to make sure that that's the process that I did hear talked about for
Right,
this
that is the
last minute.
process, right.
Okay, thank you.
We have
understand.
posted not only the hearing, but a Budget Committee meeting immediately following the public hearing, whatever time that adjourns. And yes, they will have listened to the public and they will discuss, and you have at least 3 Budget Committee members here. They will discuss what they've heard and whether they wish to make changes up, down, where they want to make the changes. And that will be what goes to first deliberative session on Saturday, February 4th at 10 a.m.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
The other way.
It's not a personal mic, it's an area mic.
Well, isn't this the voice that you pick up when you
Yeah.
film people? Yeah. Well, as I mentioned to you, it's awfully nice, I think, as we show these, which is great, to the public, that they also see who is speaking from the public side. I made several movies, so I'm not looking to get another role. I do have a couple of questions, Madam Chairman, if I might. Thanks for your speaking up, incidentally, and I will apologize to all of you. I assure you that on the 31st of this month, I have a new set of ears coming. so I shan't continue to be such a nuisance. I noticed, Madam Chair, that if I understood correctly, there was some correspondence that you got that was directed at the administration, and you labeled them anonymous?
One email was anonymous. There was no person's name on it. The other email that came via the Communication Council's email
Okay, sorry.
address had a name.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not trying to put my legal, but that anonymous one should not even be kept, should be burned immediately, because it's too controversial to even allow it to exist. If you don't do that, then I'd make a rumpus, because it's really, really bad stuff. When, incidentally, our correspondence items, like if there was a letter or something that was to be presented, is there a time limit? Do you like it like 10 days before, about 10 days for correspondence to come in so that it can be
Exactly.
read, or what? The same thing applies if you want to be on the agenda, that
Definitely, it's
10-day
a
rule.
minimum of 10 days. Notice as one citizen did make a request, and that person is on the agenda
Sure,
for the
okay.
evening.
All right. And on the deficit budget side, what is, my thick head, what is the last day in which the default budget will be set? You know, I
On
mean,
the agenda, Mr. Martin, the default budget is due no later than January 30th.
I'm sorry, I should have said, when will, I knew it's due then, but when will there be the last meeting to solidify it when it becomes?
We hope to solidify it tonight. We discussed it in December
Okay.
briefly, and it's on our
right,
agenda
okay.
tonight for further discussion and for action.
Thank you. I'm
Would
sorry.
you like an agenda, Mr. Martin?
I'm sorry?
Would you like an agenda?
No, I have one.
Okay.
I knew it was due that date. I was just wondering when was the chomp time, you know, et cetera, so-called. I'd like to just leave you with one legal thought about default budgets. In the law, there is what is known when you are trying to get a construction, and everybody has push, pull, north, south, east, west on the interpretation of the default budget. Seems very clear to others here, seems clear to others here, let alone those there and those there, if you will. I suggest to you that you should be aware of a legislative history, which is what guides courts and everybody. They'll say, well, what was in the minds of the people when they passed this? It is obviously very clear, and I would urge you to consider this. You wouldn't put any default budget unless you said, gee, we have to keep education going. If the next year's budget is higher than what they want, and they say no more, we can't close down the schools. So what do? We go back to a lesser number of prior time. So any notion that anybody has, I'm sure, would be dramatically contested, should be, because the default budget should in no way exceed, let's say that the budget that this budget committee comes in with 20 million, and that's on the agenda. No one can come in and say, well, we have a default budget of 21 million. If you do, I'll sign the request to the court, because I think that's completely illogical and completely contrary to legislative history. So please consider that. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we have some discussion items, and we do have a citizen's request to address you. The first one is policy for second reading, reduction in professional staff workforce. You did not make any changes last month for first reading, and the changes about the number of years were because the tenure laws changed in the state of New Hampshire, and basically the other changes were to bring up to date the classifications of subjects that we teach. The Teachers Association has seen the proposed changes, and they have not opposed any of the edits. Are there any other comments about this policy. If you approve it for second reading, it becomes policy. If not, the second item under discussion is a citizen request, and Mr. Ogier sent an email to the superintendent on December 29th with a copy to me, and it said, "To School Board Chairperson and Superintendent Marie Ross, I wish to address the board on several aspects of the budget process at the January meeting. Please place me on the agenda. Thank you, RGL Ogier." So, Mr. Ogier, thank you very much for your notice, and we acknowledged his request and said he would certainly be put on the agenda. And I asked that if he had anything particular that he wanted in the minutes to bring a copy for the clerk. So, Mr. Ogier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In that I have a number of pieces of paper over here, I would like to stand behind this desk and address my remarks to the board and to the audience that is here. First of all, I want to thank the board for the work they've done this year. It's been very difficult, but I very much appreciate the work you have done and the budget figures that you have tentatively arrived at. I would also like to say that in the discussion that I hope to have with you tonight, that we shed a lot of light and we are not looking to generate any heat. In addition, I would say, I hope we can get rid of some of the saturnine faces that I see, and I hope we can get a couple of smiles at appropriate moments during this whole process. Now, you might say, well, who is this character up here? Well, I'm Archie Ogier. I live on Peaked Hill, just about a mile from here. I've lived in Bristol since 1963. And I've worked in the school district from 1963 to 1998. Originally, I taught physics and chemistry, and then I got involved in administration in 1971, and I stayed in administration until my retirement. I served as a teacher. I served as a department head. I served as an assistant principal at the high school and the middle school on different occasions, and I also served as principal of the middle school, and finally, the last 2 years I worked at the SAU office, and my title was Special Projects Director. And I think that was a way of saying, you could smile, it's all right. So anyway, now, I've also held elective office in the town of Bristol in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I was on the Board of Selectmen 3 different times, twice because I was asked to fill in, and once because I chose to run and serve for 5 years. I was on the Budget Committee in the town of Bristol for 6 years and chairman 5 years of the 6. After that, I became chairman of the Newfound Area School District Budget Committee, and I served in that position for 3 years, and I retired from that last year. Now, effectively, I am retired and out of public service, so to speak, except I'm chairman of the trustee of the cemetery. You never know. Okay? So let's hope that we can make some progress with what we're doing. All right, what I want to do tonight is I want to talk to you very briefly on the history of the budget process. I want to review a packet that I'm going to give to the school board. There's 5 pages, double-sided. And then if there are questions and it's permitted, I would be delighted to answer any questions that might come forth. When I first came aboard and became familiar with the budget in Newfound, it was a totally different system than what you see at this point. It went 100 series, 200 series, and it was kind of alphabetical, and it started with administration and so on. Well, it might be interesting to note that the very first budget that I had to deal with was in 64, 65, and the proposed budget at that time was total budget $491,976. Now, we are currently operating FY12 this year with a budget of about 23.9 million, give or take a few dollars here and there. Quite a difference in terms of what we are expending. And if you want to take a minute sometimes, figure out what the ratio is in growth of the general expenses at 63, 64, and compare that with the growth that took place in the expenses in the school district. It's an interesting thing to do. Now, the form used in budgeting was very different than it is today, and a change of format was asked for by the Department of Education and DRA, and the first year that Newfound used the current budget format was for 80-81. And you can find that total format in the Financial Accounting Handbook, which is the Bible for all the school districts in New Hampshire, on the state website. Go to the Department of Education. Interesting footnote is Newfound played a role in the development of the format that we see and use today, which is about 30 years. Flora Braley was from Hebron, was the person who was asked to go to Concord and work on some of the changes. Now, if you look at the different formats, you'll find there's a number of different levels that can be selected by a school district to do their reporting with respect to financial issues. Newfound has chosen to use the very minimal kind of budget format that's available for school districts to use. That's not a negative or a positive. These formats are at the choice of the districts. Now, second part that I now want to do, now that I've enthralled you with history, and I see a lot of smiles, is I want to hand out a packet to the school board and then go through that really quickly.
Smiles when we heard Flora Braley's name.
I noticed that, thank you.
Our representative for Hebron. If you want to use this, I'm just going to take this off of you.
Okay, I was gonna, thank you. I was gonna give it to you.
Make sure the card touches.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Now, I'll have some
Mrs.
very...
Braley is still very well.
Yes, I think about 93. Yeah.
I go by
A
her every
delightful
day.
person. I remember one time as she was retiring, I was asked to give a few, I was asked to make a few comments about Flora, and I said the usual flowery things in the beginning, and I said, I want you to understand that there have been some terrible things and things that she said and done, and I said, and now I will say them to you. And I stood absolutely silent, and finally everybody said, oh, I got it. Anyway, subtle sense of humor, I guess. All right, if you will, have the packet in this format, put a big 1 right there, so you'll know where we're at. turn the page and put a 2 on that one up at the top, because I will be going back and forth in terms of some of the issues. Page 1 is simply some definitions of function numbers that we use in the budgetary process. This is taken from DRA. You can get it from the Department of Education as well. The entire setup is, of course, more than the 1,000 series. It's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, et cetera, up to 5,000. And all of those are subdivided. But to give you a flavor of what's there, this defines what ought to be in each function number. Okay. Page 2 is a statement about the default budget, and we'll get back to that. Page 3. Over the years, put a number 3, if you would, please, up at the top. Over the years, I have discovered it's sometimes very useful to have available specific data from a huge budget that's got over 500 lines, and you may want to know something about salaries, and you have to go through 20 pages to pull out that information. What I've done for the board, and anybody with a computer could do this, I have simply pulled out every single salary in the budget, okay? And it's listed here. Turn the page, put a 4 there, if you would, please. You will see the same kind of process that I did for health insurance lines only, okay? We'll come back to both of these pages shortly. All right, next one is page 5. Some of you, at least the SAU people, will recognize this page 5 is simply a copy of a page on the website, okay? And it's a copy of the IT technology. We'll get back to that and have a few discussions about that. Finally, I have, and on the back side of that, there are some salaries listed. Please label that as page 6. Should be in red, but that is page 6. Okay, now, page 7 is job description, as is page 8. Finally, we come to page 9 and 10, and they're simply excerpts from the law that pertains to the budget, part of the budgetary process that we use in Newfound. Specifically, I'm quoting RSA 32, section 3, and that's from the definitions, and on the back side there is a quote, and that's page 10. Please put that there as page 10. It's a quote from RSA 40:13. Okay, so that is background information that you may find useful in a few minutes. All right.
We don't have any more copies. I just think, what is the purpose of his presentation? Because I'm sitting here for 20 minutes and I don't get any of this stuff. So I just don't understand.
You'll understand the purpose shortly. Be patient, please, and I'd appreciate a smile.
No, not really.
Okay.
I just don't get the purpose of it.
You will.
I think if they have the data, they can use the data.
Well, please don't take this out of my allowed time, the interaction here. All right. I'd ask you, please, to turn to page 3. Purpose of this is to talk with the school board and have some interaction with them and to have them understand some of the issues that are involved with budgeting, because there are new members and I don't think they really understand the entire process. Now, if you look at page 3, okay, the first column you see is strictly accounting of the number of lines that concern salary. And there are 50 lines in the budget that concern salary. This is taken directly from sheets that have been provided by the SAU office. The next column gives the function number. And notice there are function numbers from all over the budget because salaries are paid all over the budget. Object number, and then you have a brief title of what that salary is for. You then have in the next column the actual amount of money that was spent fiscal year 11. Then you have the current year's budget. The next 4 or 5 lines involve the expenditures for fiscal year 13 at the various schools. Then you have Fund 22, which is federal funds and doesn't really involve tax dollars. And then finally you have all funds for fiscal year 13, what that budget is. You follow me so far in terms of what we're looking at? You should I think by now. Last column I think is a very important column because I think it gives you some analysis of the budget in terms of salaries very quickly. What I did is ask the computer to sort the salaries to see where the changes took place. Under your last column, in parentheses, please notice a number $684,660. Now, what that represents is the line that has the greatest reduction in salaries. And as you go down through, you will notice the absolute value of the numbers getting larger and larger. Or smaller and smaller, I should say, till finally you get to the point where you have positive numbers and those indicate increases. Notice, please, that the funds that have the most taken out of them are out of teacher salaries, $684,660. From that, it drops dramatically down to $76,734. So if you have questions at some point, a reference sheet like this can be very valuable to you. Now, on the plus side, in terms of salaries that have increased, you have a number that changed not at all, and then you have something at a $57 increase, and some function numbers got an increase of $91,659. Okay? So that's how you read this chart, and I think gives you some quick information. Flip it over, and you're into the health insurance. Every health insurance line in the budget of 500 lines is pulled out and listed here. There are 32 lines of health cost information. Now, it's set up essentially the same way. Notice the column on the far right that tells you increases and decreases. Notice that the greatest decrease in health insurance cost is that's the bottom line, 1100 to 11. Health insurance decreased in that line $543,552. Okay? Please also notice, though, that some lines had an increase of $33,800 as the maximum increase. Now, the net result, the change overall, putting the pluses and minuses together, is in red. Okay? So that shows we've had a net decrease in health insurance as proposed by the school board's budget of $1,347,909. Now, that's assuming no errors were made in terms of telling the computer what to do. All right, can I ask you to look now at page 5? Now, the reason I bring this up is because I think that one of the things that we have to do, or I should say that public officials ought to do with respect to budgeting, is they have to build trust in the community. And one of the ways to bring forth that idea of trust and forthrightness is to make sure that we're extremely careful in terms of what we say and how we present it. Now, this is what is, okay? I looked at it and I said, wait a minute. The 3 people in IT have a salary of $141,000, and they're in 2225. Then I read the next line, and it said, ITS is assisted by 6 building-level technicians and 6 building-level website developers. So I immediately asked, are we talking about an additional 12 people? That I understand that. But the uninitiated is going to ask that question. Do we have 15 people here? Well, someone who doesn't know, they're going to say, there's 15 people here because it's on the website. Now, I said, let's take a look and see where those people are. Turn the page. And you will see a listing that's all in red. You'll see the position, the building they're assigned to. That's right from the employee list for this year.
Excuse me, Archie, before you continue to explain the connection to the previous page, none of these at all connect to the previous page. So I don't want you to go down.
I beg to differ with you because the listing on the employee sheet says ICT person.
It says ITS, which is.
Yes, and that other says ITS,
These
but
are not
I'm bringing forth the information I could find about all these people, okay? And what I'm finding is, I can find 6 people, okay? Of the 6,
These people do not do the ITS that you have on your other page. These people are librarians, what we call librarians.
okay,
Mr. Ogier,
then
so-
I will ask you, not now, okay? But someone needs to show me where those 6 people are, because I can't find them anyplace. I don't need to do it now, that's something we can look up.
Well, Archie, if you're going to explain something, let's start with the correct premise and then explain how you want it. But the correct
Premise on your previous sheet about these people, and I definitely, as I read this, I think we got to fix the wording on this. When it says that ITS is assisted by 6 building-level technicians and 6 building-level website developers, those are people who may be teachers or have some other role, and they're fully paid, and they would be, their salaries are reported under the teacher line, and they receive a small stipend to be the go-to person in that building.
I agree with you that's
Right.
part of what happens, Marie.
But these are not the same people at all.
But I do want to point out some, I think, inconsistencies. If these people, if the people here, the
Yeah.
building reps,
Yeah.
okay, if they're working in technology, then they should not be in 1100, because if you look at the job description of what's in 1100, they don't fit.
They are their full-time position is an 1100 position, and as, Dan, you can explain what you do.
Yeah.
I'd like to first correct one thing that my perception is a misstatement. You said that the people listed on your back sheet, the positions, are the only ones you could find. Then you didn't look hard enough, because the 3 IT positions are very clearly defined.
Oh, I agree. I agree, Dan.
Now, I will say, just to be clear, that the stipends that these 12 positions that we keep talking about are a total of $12,000 in stipends. $2,000 per building, 450 for one position, 750 for
I'm
the
very
other.
familiar with that.
And the cost of those salaries, the costs of those stipends are included in the salaries line in the 22-25 function. If you were to look in the formula of the budget for the 22-25 salary function, you would see the sum of the three salaries for the three employees defined on the ITS website, plus the $12,000 for stipend.
I certainly look at
And the other
that.
positions that are listed are in those functions that are associated with them.
I have no problem with sitting with you some other time and looking at that very quickly, but I'm saying I'm a reasonably experienced person in the budgetary process, and I can't find that spelled out very clearly in the existing materials. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying, hey, look, I took a look, and I had difficulty finding this, and I shouldn't. Any citizen should be able to pick up the information and find exactly what each position is, where they're assigned, how much money they're paid. That's the law.
Dan, you said that, what's the code number that has that 12,000 in it? Is that added in with the other?
Mr. Ogier made a request to me for the list of every employee by name with their salary for the current year, which I provided to him. And if he had done the comparison of the sum of those three salaries, which is on the spreadsheet I gave him, with the salary line in the 22-25 function, he would have seen the $12,000 difference. And he granted maybe those stipends should be, if we were to spell out every single stipend that is paid in the district separately, you'd be an additional, there'd be hundreds of more lines of information that would be, in my opinion, overwhelming. But once again, the spreadsheet that was given of every employee by name and salary, that is separated by function. So for example, the three employees in the 22-25 function, the three ITS employees, their individual salaries are listed with their names, and there's a total. And you compare that to the spreadsheet that everyone gets with the 22-25 salaries, and there's a difference of $12,000. And those are the stipends for the building.
That difference is not the issue, Dan. The difference lies in that's not an issue at all. I understand that. That's very clear. Okay?
Well, the people
Not a problem. But let me proceed, okay? Now, there are positions called ICT specialist. Let me read you the goal, the job goal of an ICT specialist. Provide leadership in the middle school, high school by working with teachers to seamlessly integrate the use of technology and information resources into instruction to meet state and national standards. Okay, does that sound like a regular teacher? Absolutely not. And it's not budgeted that way. It's budgeted as a librarian at the middle school and the high school. I don't have a problem with that. Here's where I have the problem. Turn the page. Elementary ICT, very same position. Job goal, provide leadership in the elementary schools by working with the students and teachers to seamlessly integrate the use of technology into instruction that meets the state and national standard for instructional technology. Those job goals are pretty close. Now, I will say to you that the middle and high school are budgeted in 22. The ICT people at the elementary are budgeted in 1,100. And to me, that's inconsistent with the way things ought to be.
I can explain the rationale for
Well-
that. Would you like to know why?
No, not right now, because I'm going to be running out of time. That's the problem.
Well, actually, if you're going to ask a question, I think it's important to get the correct answer.
I'll take questions after, and we can go back to
Mr. Ogier,
that.
you've had 25 minutes now. I would give you another 5 minutes and then questions.
Okay. Now, what I would propose the board to consider is that they review all job descriptions, any new ones that are proposed coming up, and any positions that don't have job descriptions, I would propose that the board label that job description on where it's going to be budgeted by placing what function number it's under and what fund it's going to be under. You know, I'm not saying they're incorrect what they're doing. I'm simply saying there's confusion. It's very obvious. There's a way to eliminate that confusion. That's just a suggestion to look at. All right, the last 2 pages are quotes from the various RSAs. One more page I want to look at real quickly. There's a great deal of discussion that goes on about the default budget. Sometimes past practice is a reasonable thing to look at to see how default budgets ought to be developed. There's some gray areas with respect to the law, or at least they're not clear to everybody, and people interpret the law a little bit differently. That's why I say perhaps past practice might not be a bad idea to look at how we developed it last year. So look at page 2. And pay particular attention to item 6. Please notice that there were 4 positions that were not funded for FY12. Please note that those positions and their benefits were not included in the default budget. Okay, now, if we translate that, what does that say about the upcoming default budget? Does that not say any positions that are not funded under the $21.6 million budget, should they not be eliminated from the default budget? And along with all the benefits, not just health insurance, but all benefits. Life insurance, retirement, FICA, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if we do that, and you take the numbers that you see in front of you, your default budget's going to be somewhere very close to what you're putting forth as the proposed budget. It'll be under 22 million. As a matter of fact, if you do it closely, you may find that your default budget is going to be less than what you asked for. Now, I thank you very much for the kind attention. I hope I have helped you understand a little bit more about the default budget. And again, I repeat, I do this to shed light, not to generate heat. And, you know, we as voters will make final decisions, deliberative session, and then finally, we will make our final decisions when we vote in March. So thank you for your kind attention. If you have questions, and the chair will allow, I will try to answer questions you may have.
Although no more than 5 minutes for any questions. Mr. Ozier's had 30 minutes so far on the agenda.
Thank you much.
Dr. Ross?
May I please address your red on page 6, these positions? I understand that when you saw the word technology in the title, such as Information and Communication Technology Specialist, you associated those with our technology budget. We, many years ago, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, actually, if I look at the job description, it was 2009, so it was a few years ago. We rewrote the job descriptions. Well, this is FY13, so we're talking FY9. So that's like 3 years ago. So if we rewrote the description according to the state definition of what we need to be teaching for elementary school, library media specialist, and computer technology teaching, as well as the secondary level. And we called them information communication technology because books are information, communication, as well as computers. And so we thought that that was a title that comprehensively redefined the new role of the librarian. In all of our previous budgets, we have budgeted the school librarians at the elementary level in the 1100 series. They are certified teachers, the elementary level librarians.
The Bristol Elementary School librarian was budgeted under 2222, guaranteed. I know, I did it myself,
Well,
back
when-
in years past.
Well, maybe in long years ago, when we redefined these job descriptions, we currently have an art teacher at the elementary level who does all four our elementary levels. We have a music teacher at the elementary levels. Those teachers are budgeted in instruction. And so children in the elementary level have what we call specials. And they have art, they have music, they have phys ed, which is budgeted in the 1100 as teachers, and they have their computer class, which is budgeted as a teaching assignment. So we, in order to be consistent with our elementary programming, we have budgeted the elementary ICT specialists in the same way we would budget art, music, phys ed, and computer classes. That is what elementary students get. They're certified teachers, they are certified elementary, and they teach weekly classes to all of our elementary schools. So that is the reason that those positions are budgeted the same as the art, music, and phys ed currently, because that is the weekly special for elementary students. When we go to the middle school and the high school, those people do not teach classes on a regular basis. They are library media specialists, and they are housed in this library, one at the middle school, one at the high school, and they are there all day. So those people are budgeted in the 2222 because they serve no other purpose. They don't teach classes to the students. They are there to advise the students and help them with technology and to work with teachers on integrating. So the rationale as to why the four elementary, there's actually 3 teachers serving 4 schools currently. They're in the 1100 series. You're going to see in the FY13 budget, there are only 2 of those positions budgeted for FY13. The person that you have listed here as the French/data coordinator, the job description approved by the board is a school redesign coordinator, and this is our French teacher who's budgeted as the French teacher, and as a department head, he had originally been assigned to 4 sections, and part of his day, through some grant funding opportunities, is to help with school redesign. So he does a lot of data work currently funded by grants, but the reason that he is funded in the 1100 is because his primary role is as a teacher. So I just wanted a clear explanation as to why they are where they are. And we can, as you suggest, the board can look at labeling the function and the fund for job descriptions as we go through the handbook, and we're always looking to update that, and that's not necessarily a bad suggestion, but I just didn't want you to confuse that these positions should be in any way related to the technology budget.
Mr. Lieto?
I was just going to simply say that recommendation to include the budgetary assignment categories on the job description would be helpful in 2 ways. It would help people such as Mr. Ogier who are looking to make sense of this morass. And it would help us when we discuss a particular job description to expose ourselves to the explanation you gave to us and therefore provide us with that.
That was the end goal to which I was driving.
Yeah.
To have that done, and that eliminates all of the kind of discussions we had, could have about it. Now, I didn't hear your question. I did hear your explanation.
My question was, could I give an answer to your previous question?
You wanted smiles.
Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Ogier.
Thank you.
I guess I'm shut off, and that's the end of that. So thank you very much, and I do it with a smile.
Thank you. You now have on your agenda to continue the discussion we started last month about the default budget development, developing the default budget, and you were given this information. I believe it was in your packet before tonight. Mr. Migliore, did you have something before we get into this topic, or what?
Yeah, it's kind of a question for Mr. Ogier.
Thank you, Joe.
When we
Speak up, please.
when we last met, we decided by motion, which passed 5-2, to direct the business administrator to present a default budget 2 ways, which included the existing structure and the cost of health care as proposed in the budget, 100K for life safety issues, and does not include funding for the positions that the board decided to eliminate and the associated costs. Was that your motivation for wanting to clarify that, as it was done in prior years, the positions were excluded?
Yes, then it is part of the reason that I had that sheet in the packet, is to show what we did last year in reaching a default budget. And the RSA that I have included will also substantiate on a closer reading that contractual issues and all people who work for the district are under contract. If those change, and that person is deemed to be not necessary to be in the system, it can't be in the default budget. It's got to go.
Well, that was the nature of my original question earlier. We agreed that we
We already
should
agreed to do that last
take
year.
that stuff
Yeah.
out. but-
But beyond that, if your budget that you have proposed at 21.6 includes a good deal of dollars for people who are going to remain but will not get the same health benefit, the difference between what they get in the old budget and what's in the new budget, you can't put that in the default budget because it's a contractual issue. And you have said in FY13, we're not going to fund that. We're cutting back the benefits. So as a contract issue, I don't believe it's appropriate for that to be in the default budget.
Mr. Ware?
You raise an interesting point. Some of those people, if I'm correct, don't have contracts. Let me finish, please. One interpretation could be their salary shouldn't be in the default budget. That is, we're not bound by a contract to have those people. The positions are gone in the default budget. I personally don't think that's correct, but that's certainly one interpretation.
In this district, I don't believe there's any employee that does not sign a contract. If they haven't signed a contract, they don't work in the district.
Am I incorrect?
Yeah, but to that extent, though, Lou, the loss references and other obligations previously incurred, so it's the salary obligation.
That's an interesting interpretation, but if I don't have a contract with you, I haven't established an obligation. But let's just clarify, are there any significant number of employees in the district who are not under contract?
There are no employees without a contract for this year. There are no employees with a contract for next year.
I understand that part. Yeah, okay, then I am incorrect. Not the first time either.
And also, when it talks about contractual obligations, we have a legal obligation to fulfill the requirements of student IEPs.
Of course, I'm not.
Well,
But the point's moot because there are no.
Every employee in this in the district who's currently working has a contract.
My
Now,
mistake.
in addition to
It's not a
that,
collective bargaining agreement,
I understand.
but a contract.
but in addition, if you have a new employee and you put a new employee in the budget, then that, I believe, would probably be very appropriate to put in your default budget. You know, it's got to work both ways, and that's really all I'm saying.
Can I also modify my answer one way? Every permanent employee.
Yeah.
So temporary employees, sub-employees, et cetera, no.
Yeah,
Substitute teachers don't have contracts,
yeah,
but
that's wrong, yeah. There was only contract wrong.
So we have this large document in front of us, and I believe Mr. Rossner has followed what Mr. Migliari just pointed out in last month's meeting as far as how the default budget would be built. And that's why you have in the last two columns on the right, two different sets of numbers. So Mr. Rossner, would you like to explain or make any comments about your document?
Well, just to reference our discussion that Mr. Migliori was just referring to, when you asked last month, you asked me to build it on the proposed staffing structure, not the existing staffing structure. Eliminate the retirement contingency that was part of this year's budget. add back the safety code improvements that are anticipated for the New Hampton school based on the life safety code, reduce the amount of the debt payments for the Honeywell energy management contract, increase the anticipated expense for unemployment with the substantial reduction of reduction of force that we're contemplating, and then have two versions with healthcare, one with the existing benefit structure for the support staff, one with the proposed benefit structure for the support staff. And when I say benefit, I mean healthcare. As far as some concerns, I think I heard someone mention concerns that we would potentially eliminate positions and not eliminate the associated costs, such as retirement or Social Security payments. That's impossible, because when we reduce positions, the budgeted amounts for FICA and retirement are just formula driven by the salaries contemplated at their respective percentage rates. So there is no FICA or retirement budgeted, or healthcare for that matter, at all for the positions that have been eliminated. So both positions and the associated costs are out. And what you'll see is in this sheet, we've done it a little bit differently this year. We've got the current year's approved budget, which is the FY12 V6 first set of columns. The next set of columns are the proposed budget as it currently stands. The columns labeled FY13 default V1A. That is with the proposed healthcare, which is why you'll notice, for example, if you go about 6 lines down, the line that's titled 1100-211 health insurance, you can see the numbers total $1.8 million current year, $1.26 million in the proposed budget with the changes that are contemplated, $1.26 million in default version 1A, which mirrors the proposed year, and higher in default version 1B because it proposes this year's structure, but with the reduced staffing. So that's why it's lower than this year, but higher than the proposed and default 1A. Is that clear? No? Someone's shaking their head no. All right, let me start again. The first 3 columns, FY12 V6, that's this year's budget with existing structures for healthcare and staffing. The next set of columns, FY13 V3, that's the proposed budget with the proposed structure of employees and healthcare. The next column is the default, which is for things like salaries and benefits in default V1A are going to be the same as the proposed budget. So in the healthcare line, $1,263,000. And the final set is the default with the proposed employee counts, but the existing healthcare structure, which is why it's less than the current year, because less employees, and more than the proposed or default V1A, because of a richer benefit, if you will. And that's why the number is higher than the proposed or default 1A, but lower than the existing year. Does that make sense?
Is that what makes the difference in the bottom line?
Approximately $700,000 between the 2 default versions in front of you, representing the difference in healthcare structures for the support staff, as we've talked about for a number of months.
Dan, there's a difference.
There are a couple of minor discrepancies I'm seeing here, which I don't understand at the moment, but and I apologize for that.
It's like about $1,000 difference.
Yeah, that first line, I need to do some research to find out where that $1,000 is from.
Where are you looking?
It's actually 700. It's about $785. On the first line, 1100, 112.
Yeah.
The defaults are higher by about $785 than the proposed. So I don't, and the 1100, 114s are down substantially, about $32,000. So I need to spend a little time with that. I apologize for not picking that up sooner.
You're forgiven, dear.
But otherwise, in the defaults, what you'll see is many lines that mirror, let's just stick with default V1A, for example. You'll see many lines that mirror the proposed budget, because we've dropped the salaries and the benefits, and many lines that mirror the current year's existing budget, because that's part of the definition of a default budget.
Questions?
Yeah, well, I'm a little confused. When we established the budget, we eliminated those benefits,
Right.
so they're gone. How can we put them back into the full budget? That's not even legal.
That was a motion that was made by Mr. Leoto just to see what, he asked Dan to create those two versions.
Yeah, but I'm asking how we can do that. I don't think that's legal.
Well, we
It
haven't
does-
done it
No,
yet.
we haven't done it yet, we could vote for one or the other.
He asked for the data, and the data's now before us, and there's a difference of about 700,000.
Well, we knew that.
Well, Dan wasn't busy enough.
So you made him dance for nothing.
No.
No.
Other questions from the board on what Mr. Rossner has provided? Mr. Leoto?
Independent of the healthcare question, which is clearly the elephant in the room.
Speak up, please.
Independent of the issue of the difference between V1A and V1B in healthcare related items, are there any other differences that you either would like clarification or are uncertain about with respect to the definition of what is a default budget?
No, I'm comfortable with I've spent a great deal of time with these sheets, obviously not enough because $775 difference in the first line, but I have spent a great deal of time on a line item basis going over what's the number coming out of V6 current year, what's the number coming out of proposed V3 FY13, and I have a high level of comfort that either number with the defined and discussed difference in structure would be accurate.
I don't think when you were listing the ups and the downs, what you added and subtracted, I'm not sure that I heard the increase in the transportation contract that was already negotiated.
Yes, I did not say that out loud, but it is there.
It is there. That's what I thought.
And that number, I can give you
I don't need to know the number,
Okay.
I've been writing down what you said.
it's the fourth year of it's the
Right.
fourth year of a transportation contract, excuse me, the third year. And there's a 2.5%.
I know you did an
change.
excellent job in renegotiating it.
So yes, transportation is also changed by the contract. That's the only other, long-term contract we have.
Was it necessary, I don't remember I know that we pay for gas, so did you increase that at any?
I did not. I left that at the previous year's number of 143,000. If you see the current year's budget is 143,000. Next year's proposed budget is 100. If you go down to line 27, 21, 6, 26, the current year's budget is 143,000. I did raise the price in the proposed budget to about. I think I went from 3 to 3.25 a gallon, so it's up to 173,000 in the proposed budget.
Right.
But for both defaults, it's back down to 143, which is the number in this year's budget.
Okay.
Now, if you're saying that the board is recognizing that they needed to cut some positions, so they cut those out, if the board is recognizing that fuel prices have gone up, and there's a contractual obligation to transport kids, should we not have carried that prediction? Again, that's one of those nuances.
That's absolutely, in my opinion, for example, when Mr. Ogier was speaking about, he clearly referenced the gray area in the development of a default budget.
Right.
I think that is one of the gray areas. If my memory is correct, it was either 2 or 3 years ago, my first or second year here, we had signed a contract for fuel oil, heating oil. We hadn't even signed the contract. We were anticipating a certain heating oil expense because we had an extraordinarily low cost that year that we were developing, that we were in the middle of, when we were developing. I think we were paying like $1.83, and we realized we weren't going to pay anything less than $3 the following year. So in the default budget was the anticipated cost for fuel oil for the following season, not just the proposed, but in the default as well. So that's something that's one of the things that, in my opinion, there is gray area, or whichever body has the authority to create the default budget has that flexibility.
Right, the same is true on 2620, both 623 and 624, about propane and heating oils. You've gone back to what the...
I have.
and
Because
you've
I
got-
have,
Yep.
you know, and if you provide me direction otherwise, obviously I'll.
And the same thing with snow removal. That makes sense to me.
Question?
Mr. Weird?
In years past, the Budget Committee had extensive discussions about the expected costs of fuel oil and transportation fuel and things like that, with some members of that committee who are still on it, having some businesses in that area. Remind me, since you've been sitting on all of their meetings, what are their anticipations with respect to those costs?
I will just make one slight correction. I was not at the meeting December 20th.
Okay.
But to the best of my knowledge, they have not discussed commodity pricing at all.
Okay.
Not in the meetings I've been in.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board members?
So Dan, your bottom line on this default is slightly higher than the proposed budget, and yet we just talked about some areas that were lower. Was there something other than the bus increase?
Well, you've got the $100,000 in the life safety code,
Yep,
well, that's in
yep,
both.
yep.
You've got, well, you're asking me what numbers are.
It's only $30,000 off, right?
So I'm sorry, can you rephrase your question so I can understand what you're asking?
So
which-
if the board accepted your default version 1A,
Yeah.
that bottom line is 21,627, where the proposed budget is 21,597.
I would suggest that those are probably comprised of the various supplies and materials lines that are typically referred to as the principals portions in many sections. I could put it, if you want to give me a few minutes, I could find it on a line-by-line basis where it comes up with, but it's.
But you said it's the $100,000 for the life safety issue.
No, because that's in both numbers.
That's in
So,
both.
But I give you one example, for example, you're asking why the default is slightly higher or slightly?
It's slightly higher. It's
Slightly
about
higher.
almost 30,000
Yeah, I
higher.
mean, I'll give you an
No.
example, 1,107.35, replacement of equipment. Current year's budget is $8,208. The requests total $5,339, and I have in the default budgets the $8,208 that's in this year's budget, because that's a standard purchases, and that seems appropriate to me. So there's $3,000 of the $30,000 you're looking for.
It's less than 30, but yeah.
Okay, so, and you go above that, 1,107.31, there's also a difference of about $2,300. 1,106.10 supplies. This year's budget is 170, in just regular educational supplies. This year's budget, 172,000. The requests from the principals came in at 157,000. I have the 172 in the default number because that's what's in this year's budget. So there's $15,000 of it. And I would suggest to you that there's several lines, you know, there's hundreds of lines, some are up, some are down. And it's a simple factor, you know.
So those salary lines are kind of confusing, huh? I gotta figure out what happened with those. 1,100, 112, 1,100, 114.
Yep.
Something.
Mr. McGlure, did you have a question?
If I were to poll the board and ask about the changes that we made to try to refresh my memory, that with regard to the change to the support, people's healthcare premiums, did we agree to say we would provide for the premium for a single plan, and then 75 at 100%, by the way, which is different?
No.
Well, not 100% because they do a copay.
Yeah.
So
They still have the copay.
88%.
Okay, well, this is where I'm getting confused and why I have the question. And then the spousal plan, we would pay 75%.
No, 50.
No, he's right, it's 75 of the total, so up to half of a two-person plan on top of the single plan comes out to 75% of the total cost of the spousal plan.
Thank you.
And then none of the family plan.
The
Half of
balance of the family plan would be at the employee's expense. So
Right.
it comes out to 44% of a family plan. Full single
How?
plan,
You mean overall?
overall. So full single plan with the copay, so an employee making under 15,000 is paying 5% of that premium share. An employee between 15,000 to 30,000 is paying 8% of that premium share. And an employee earning over 30,000 is paying 12% of that premium share. So it's not 100% of a single plan. It's 88% or 92% or 95%.
Right.
So single plan and up to half of a two-person plan. So that equates to 75% of that two-person plan, right?
Understand that math. I don't
And then
understand the
math-
44%.
Okay, so then the balance between that number and the cost of a family plan equates to 44% of the total family plan. So
Okay.
So it's
basically,
just a
Pay half of
mathematical
that.
relationship
Yeah,
that's been
yeah.
referenced. Okay. Thank you.
and the plan itself has been substantially changed to include a $1,000 per person, $3,000 per family deductible, and higher copays for each
Right.
office visit and emergency room visit. So the plan was changed, and the amount of people in a family that it's covered has been changed, and that's the $700,000. Is that clear?
That clarifies the question, yeah.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Leota?
Going back to the fuel costs.
What?
Is there a reasonable way to improve the quality of the estimate for presently that you could make for fuel costs, both vehicles and heating, over and above just using last year's numbers? Is there something we can do, gives us a more realistic estimate of what those costs will be?
Do you know when you say, do you mean the price we're gonna pay per gallon, or do you mean the amount we're gonna use? I mean, I update for all our energy costs. I have a model that I'm happy to print out and share with you. I update every year. I evaluate the budgeted quantity of use for kilowatts,
Yep.
propane gallons, diesel fuel, heating oil. And I try and I look at degree days and stuff like that, and try and estimate the quantity. And then it's a matter of plugging in an expected cost per unit, you know? Right now, our current year's budget is for heating oil, for example, is at $3 a gallon. And we're paying a little bit more than that this year. We already made the appropriate budgetary reallocations for that. And the proposed for next year, I'm just going to pull up the exact numbers, so I'm not speaking off the top, if you don't mind. Energy cost projection. So, for example, heating oil, what's built into next year's projection, heating oil at $3 a gallon. Electricity at 0.1698 per kilowatt, and diesel fuel at $3.25.
And what are we paying now?
I can not tell you that off the top of my head.
Well, I guess my question is not to do that homework. I accept your models, because a little better model. I want to suggest to the board that we put into those line items for the bottom line budget the most reasonable estimate we can make for those total costs, and not just rely on this year's expenditures.
Okay, so obviously there's a cycle to it, and one of the things I look at, for example, is the historical cycle. And over the last fiscal year, by month, I'm going to give you a series of numbers, and this is what we paid, for example, for diesel fuel for the buses on a month-over-month basis. July, $3.22 a gallon; August, $3.20 a gallon; September, $3.12; October, those are 11. If we go back to October of 10, we were down at $2.16 a gallon. In November, it went to 258, 266, up to 271 by March of 11. And the year finished in September of 11 with 312. That's how updated my bus fuel history is when we were building this budget. I haven't updated the last couple of months.
And the number you used for this year's budget?
325. We averaged last year 296, and I used 325 for diesel fuel for the coming budget proposed.
And that's in the default?
No, what's in the default is this year's number, which is based on about $3.
Yeah, and that I think needs, I'm not suggesting one number is right and one number is wrong. I'm suggesting you need to go through, in my mind, and replace those numbers that were just transposed from last year
So
with
you
your
think-
best estimate, whatever that may be.
So you're suggesting what I hear you saying, and obviously it's your guys', it's your default budget, not mine, that you're recommending that the energy costs in the default budget mirror the proposed budget because they're the best, most up-to-date knowledge and expectations versus just being copied over from the previous year's budget.
That's my comment, yes.
Six grand.
Well, if it's in the proposed budget, the default budget is more, I would say it's covered.
Yeah, but it's not, it's the other way.
Huh?
It's not, it's the other way, default budget is.
What lines are we looking at?
26, 27?
The energy costs relative to the buildings are in function 2620, specifically 2620, 622 is electricity, and 2620, 624 is heating oil. And below that, if you go down to 2721, 626, you would see the fuel oil for the buses.
So basically, the proposed is 30,000 higher than the default.
In school bus fuel.
For the school bus fuel.
Yeah.
We got that other 30,000 you had. We didn't know where you had it.
Doesn't that wash it off?
Yeah, that'll wash it off.
No,
Right? The
'cause it's
30,000 you had, you
It's
know where it was.
30,000 lower.
Who used that?
The defaults that we have here, what I really need to understand better is the defaults in 1100-114 that I have listed is $32,000 lower than the proposed, and I'm not understanding that at the moment.
How'd you find that, Lou?
Again.
How did I find it?
Yeah.
I read the numbers.
Well,
He hates to be cold.
what I don't understand is if the higher number is in the proposed budget, and the total default budget is higher, how's that possible?
Well, you're looking at you can't look at one number in comparison to the total of all numbers. I mean, there's hundreds of numbers there, the totaling, and
Yeah, I see that, and we're not gonna make you do them again.
I don't
At
mind,
least I'm not.
whatever you want.
Speak for yourself, John.
I just did.
So I'm hearing you say, Dan, that we need to go line by line and find out where there's a discrepancy, like we said, there's $1,000 discrepancy in 1100 to 112, and we're looking for the board.
There's only one line I really need to look at, and that's
Which is?
1100-114.
Yeah, that's awful lot. So what I'm hearing us say is that you'd like the board to give you direction on, like they did with the budget, to say, make a motion about what they do want to include, what they don't want to include, and then we'll spiff it up and get the exact number and email it out. Is that what I'm hearing you say? Or you think you're not gonna find that by the end of tonight?
What else is on the agenda?
Archie, can you talk some more?
No.
No.
I need to compare the salary charts with, you know, for the sake of efficiency, I would suggest that just replacing the line, in the line for 1100-114, if you replaced the number of 267,975 that's in both default versions with the number 299,032 that's in the proposed, because that's, a large part of the session is focused on on the default structure having the same structure as the proposed, which is substantially down from the current year's budget. That would be the end of the discussion. I mean, that could be a very rational end to the discussion, and I can insert that number in the spreadsheet and tell you what the bottom calculates to very easily.
And then that's going to change your FICA and your retirement because it's
Yeah,
all formula.
it's all gonna
formula
cascade.
driven. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, those are the other lines that are not consistent.
So, if that's what you'd like me to do, I'll move forward with that. And if you want me to come back to you with an analysis of how that $32,000 didn't show up, I can do that too.
Same thing in the 1,200 114s as well. It's off by
10,000.
10,000.
Sue, did you have any questions on the default? You're really good about going over this. You have a lot of experience over the years and being on the budget committee.
You did an excellent job, Dan. That's what, from my perspective, from getting this out for us in time to look it over.
Good, I was just about to call on you, Mr. Belbin, so I'm glad to hear you say that he did an excellent job. Did you have any other questions?
No, I just want to get the ball rolling here.
I did have something circled here, 1,200, 114, under, let me see, on the proposed budget for FY13, the 70,242 for educational assistant salary, that is not in the default.
Right.
I didn't understand why.
Because we didn't have any initially in the proposed, in the current year.
Okay, I understand.
The 1,200,
Yeah.
that's the IDEA money.
Yeah, that came in later on.
Ah,
Three proposed default budget.
No, one proposed, two default.
John, did you have any questions as you went through this? So when you get to an action item, are you ready to